Hey, what's going on, Freedomers? All right, so we're gonna talk about something I've been researching, and it deeply does affect business. And I'm not gonna get too deep in a lecture. Um, I'm gonna have to sell this in a course somewhere, but as I think about it, but I'm gonna tell you about why love languages, what they are, very quickly, and um, what they are, what what uh what uh what attachment styles are, and how they affect your business life. Now I can tell you how they affect many other areas, but for this section, I'm just going to talk about business because this is my business channel. Now, um, um, all right. So you have your love languages. You have words of affirmation. Uh, Google 5 love languages test. Make sure you do that. You have physical touch. You have receiving gifts. You have quality time. You have acts of service. So these are how you communicate with other people. And wow. And so words of affirmation is verbal compliments or verbal compliments that express your love and appreciation. Acts physical touch is any act that eases. No, excuse me. Yeah, this is acts of service. Sorry, acts of service is any act that eases the burden of responsibility. Um, uh, Quality time is focused and undivided attention that is spent together. Uh, Physical, what's it called tangible. What's called receiving gifts is tangible symbols that reflect thoughtfulness and effort, and physical touch is a um, non-sexual touch that reinforces presence. Uh, and these are the ways you communicate with others. Why is this important in business? Because you need to know the love language of you. It'd be great your future business partners, um, even your clients, if you can, and people you love, and people you're close to. Um, and if this is just an example, but I like these versions because they're like for me, I forgot what mine's. My top three are words of affirmation, physical touch, and acts of service. Um, then receiving gifts and quality time. Um, Last time I checked. But I definitely am a words of affirmation. I definitely am a physical touch. These are one of my top two. If I can't do these with you, we most likely won't be friends. My How I grew up, both of my parents failed at these. They failed at these, and these are very important for me. This is how I needed love through physical touch and words of affirmation. So sometimes words of affirmation was because everybody needs to be affirmed, but physical touch could sometimes mean constant contact. Um, it doesn't always mean that they have to touch you physically, in my opinion. Um, but hearing somebody's voice could be good enough every day or every other day or whatever, or often enough. for you to know that they're thinking about you, etc., etc. And I know this because I'm always thinking about, especially the people closest to me, about contacting them, etc., etc. And this can go in the astral plane, etc., etc., where they contact you in your sleep and all this other stuff, because this is one of uh, my strongest ways of contact, physical touch, or physical contact per se. Then you have your attachment style. So this is how every person has an attachment style. So what that means is um, the attachment you developed from the ages of 1 to about 9 years old, due to your environment and how your parents raised you, parents or whoever raised you. Um, there's four of them. There's secure, there's anxious, there's avoidant, dismissive, and avoidant fearful. Um, Secure is positive. This is negative. This is negative. This is negative. If you're any of these, I'm anxious. The goal is to become secure, because everything else is uh, pretty toxic, if you ask me. Um, I just when I heard this for the first time, I almost broke down in tears because uh, I was dealing with this for the past 5 years and I didn't know it. And this is why they say know so much psychology, know so much psychology, you take nothing personal. Um, know so much psychology, you take nothing personal. And if I would have knew this 5 years ago, I would have. And this is why I probably want to teach this. If I knew this 5 years ago, if I knew these things 5 years ago, um, I probably wouldn't have had some of the friends that I've had, because I knew it was toxic and I knew that I had to develop this and grow to here. So, um, so let's make this very quick. Secure is, like I said, is positive, so you can build trust easily, and this means your parents were both not perfect, but they were in a you were in a positive environment. Your parents made you feel affirmed. They made you feel complete. They made you feel whole. They made you feel like they love you regardless, and and kind of unconditionally, no matter who, what, where you are. They don't love you, and yeah, they're your soundboard. That they're like a not a perfect soundboard, but they're a great soundboard um, for your life. And I would say if you're this, everything that you are is because of how you grew up. Well, everything that you are is because of how you grew up. But this, you could tell your parents raised you a certain way, and you're very secure in who you are. Like a great example is Gary Vaynerchuk. You could tell he has a secure um, attachment style, because his parents raised him with confidence, with trust, trust in himself, believe in himself. Now his parents, of course, weren't perfect, so they had their differences, but his parents raised him to be very confident in himself, and those are parents who are environments that develop a secure attachment style, and they were constantly reaffirming and all that other stuff. So you can build trust easily. You're easily attuned to your emotions. You can communicate. You can communicate upsets directly. Leads to with very cooperative and flexible behaviors in relationships. I can tell you, I'm not really attuned to my emotions all the time. I don't always communicate directly. I can communicate very passively, and I can be very stubborn. I lead with stubbornness, and I realized this when I was in leadership at one point with my leader partner. He was flexible, I wasn't. I was very demanding, and I was very uh, kind of dictatorish. No, not kind of. I was dictatorish. This is what I have: anxious. Now, not all of these describe me, but these are some of the qualities. Has a sensitive nervous system. Um, I forgot. I don't remember what that fully means, but I gotta figure that out. Struggles communicating directly. This is a good amount of the time, because I communicate very bluntly, so I don't know how to say things at times that will not offend others. Um, Tends to act out when triggered. I do this via social media at times. Um, no, at times I do this via social media, so I don't make my partner jealous. I don't have time for that. I rather put it in a post or put it in a video or put it in a blog or I put it in my work. I put my pain in my work, um, or journal it out or whatever. This one says, I got a quote from here that says, "I don't know I'm doing the right things unless others tell me." That's a huge one for me. Uh, that's one of the huge blockages for me because it's these are anxious attachment or anxious preoccupied meaning your mind is so preoccupied with the parent that never gave you full that always neglected you, so you're always looking for that reaffirmation, that you're always looking behind you per se, like in other words you're moving forward, um, and always like looking in the rear view mirror to see if anybody's behind you and anybody's affirming you, anybody's liking you, and all that. Like scrolling is, for me, I've learned this is a way of anxiety. To see if anybody liked my post or somebody commented under my post or whatever, it makes me feel good because it kills my anxiety. Like, oh my God, I got approved. Um, just being transparent. Um, uh, And even my father used to say that. He said, "You tend to act out whenever you feel a way on social media." And for me, I just put my pain in my work. Whatever I gain from my life, I see it as a teaching lesson, because somebody else might be going through the same thing I'm going through at the current moment, even if that was immediately. Uh, Avoided dismissive. I've been dealing with this for these people for the past 5 to 10 years. It's very toxic. It's very annoying. And I realize every person that I've dealt with has had this problem. And I just met somebody like this, and I couldn't handle it. I recently just met this avoided fearful, and uh, I could not handle it. I ain't gonna hold you. I had to block them. Uh, Avoidance, dismissive. These people, first of all, from my experience, um, avoidant dismissive people, they avoid and dismiss your pain and problems and issues. That means if you're going through something, first of all, they avoid it, like they avoid you, like in other words, from what I've researched and from what I've understood listening to videos, these people have had parents or an environment where they became the soundboard for uh, to solve somebody else's problems. Like in other words, a mother that had problems with her husband, and she became the soundboard. She became the solution per se, and she had to, she or he, excuse me, had to tune them out, and that's why they become avoidant. But that's why they become dismissive. No, that's what. Excuse me. That's why they become avoidant, because they start to hear people's problems like they did when they were younger. Kind of like, uh, kind of like in an extreme sense, your dad dying and you have to become the man of the house. You can become avoidant, dismissive because you had to grow up really, really quickly at an early age. So you become, like it says here, you become extremely self-reliant, at a young age, and uh, and whenever anybody tells you anything, and when you have to deal with somebody else's problems at an age that you're not supposed to, you tend to, it can be so overwhelming that as you get older, when you don't have to deal with that anymore, you often dismiss it, and you often do your best to avoid it so you don't have to deal with that trauma. Um, so you often don't have to deal with that trauma of reliving the pain of sitting with a problem that you have to listen to over and over and over and over and over, whether it be your mother, your grandmother, your father, your environment. You had to deal with an issue, and you had to become self-reliant out of necessity. Sometimes this is out of necessity. This is not even like because you want to. Uh, because you would either was tired of being abused or whatever. I can become this, but I know I'm not this. So they downplay the importance of relationships because a lot of relationships are with people who are anxious. They don't know this, who are anxious people who are clingy, and these people often be clingy, aggressive, um, want to tell you all their problems. They over communicate, they over talk. Um, they overtalk, they're smothering, and these two people often, in my experience, have often build a relationship, and they often build this toxic cycle that I even seen online. It was quite interesting to see, and I had to sit with myself and say, where in my life have I done this before? Um, and sometimes these two build a relationship, but I've seen this and this build a relationship a lot. Um, and can become extremely self-reliant, like I explained before, and can become more vulnerable in big crisis. So that means, usually, what happens with these people is that they wait for pain to hit them for life for them to change. So if because they're so used to like tuning stuff out, like avoiding problems and dismissing the issue, they're so used to doing that it affects their business, it affects their life, it affects their relationships, it affects how they learn, it affects everything. These things, these attachment styles affect everything. Like anxiety affects every part of my life. It's not even funny. Um, from how I learn to how I dress to how I take care of myself to how I spend my money to um, to how I deal with people, how it affects every part of my life. So these are very important. When you had to become self-reliant at a young age, and you tend to avoid things that are too emotional and don't involve work. And these people are workaholics. They might drink a lot. They may drink wine. They may drink a lot of. They may watch porn and etc. etc. Become addicts to things to help them escape per se. Um, um, and these people often get in relationships because they want to avoid the work that may not be going the way they want to, etc., and they may dismiss anything outside of what they feel is important. Um, Avoidant, fearful, meaning they're more dependent. They're more dependent. It doesn't mean they don't have relationships. These two people have relationships, just that they deal with it different. Um, avoidant, fearful. So more important, they're more dependent in relationships than the avoidant, dismissive. They're strong fears of rejection, and they have high anxiety in relationships. So what that means is they know how to get a relationship. They know you have to give love to get love. But once they get the love, they self sabotage, and they have negative self talk. They do things deliberately. They lie. They're unintegral. Um, there's so many different things, so many negative behaviors. Even if they pray to God and they say, because I've seen this in the flesh, where they pray to God about, oh, I want this relationship, I want a certain boo 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 boo, and because they've been taught to avoid and be fearful. Um, sorry, they've been taught to be fearful of that intimacy. because they fear they fear rejection. So these people crave intimacy, and they know they want intimacy, but they fear it. So uh, these people get anxious when people are getting close to them, much like them, and uh, they destroy the relationship because they don't want to. They're so focused on rejection and failure and losing, and this is also what you would call the fear of failure. Like, I don't believe in the fear of success. I believe there's only a fear of failure, because you're so focused on failure that you keep manifesting it over and over and over. And these people do that, that they avoid the intimacy of a relationship, and they're fearful of it being the best thing that they ever had. And these are people, I would say, um, their parents were somewhat in between the mixture of them, of not giving any emotions at all and not caring for them at all, one or both, or they didn't know what to expect. Um, um, I have anxious, preoccupied love style. These people are often broke because they're preoccupied, meaning their mind is so wrapped up in relationship and getting validation that they're not doing whatever it takes to make them secure financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I've seen this with my ex best friend, not by me understanding now as I go through it myself. Where she was so caught up on really, she had anxiety, so she was so caught up. She was going back and forth between here, but she was really going through here. But she was so caught up in a relationship where didn't, um, she didn't, uh, she didn't learn to secure herself in the ways that were important. And went to, um, because I went to secure myself financially, I started to outgrow this issue. So as I recent and what was crazy is what recently triggered this for me was a somebody who was avoidant dismissive, and I found out that this is what they are, and they have this love type as well, and I attracted this again, and it's something that I had a situation recently that made me shut down and really made me think and go within myself, and um when you're anxious, like I said, you do all these things, and you 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 have the understanding that yeah, you have the understanding that you're so preoccupied with things that make you anxious. You're so you're so preoccupied with things that make you anxious. You're so preoccupied with things that make you feel less, that make you feel, and that you're so preoccupied in anxiety with things that don't matter, that you're not securing what's important in your life. um, so why is this important in business? Because these things, the reason why I spent so much time on this, because these things, and according to how you, like I said earlier, how you love, your love languages can affect, like, you could want one of these things, or two of these things, or three of these things, but because of how because you were taught to be, let's say, anxious or dismissive or fearful, um, you can't get that. Let's say, for instance, your love language is how to communicate with others. Your love language is how you communicate with others, but you're conditioned uh, to be attached based on your how your parents raised you. So everything in this world is sales and communication. Everything is a conversation away. So you can make a sale, so you can not make, so you may not make that sale because uh, because, or finish that course, or take your life to the next level because your parent neglected you and caused anxiety, this anxiety attachment. Um, or you can pause it when it's time to move forward, because you feel anxiety. You feel like, oh, like I said earlier, you feel, um, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing unless somebody told me, right? Um, or when it's but you crave deeply, you crave deep success, and because it's your personality at the time. Now these two, meaning your love languages and um your love languages and your attachment style can change as you grow. These two things can change. Like my attachment style is going to change because I'm going to deliberately conquer my anxiety, because I know these attachment styles affect every part of your life, especially if you're not secure, because the goal is to be secure or whole, as they would say. Um, So you may, let's give you another example. You may not be in a relationship with, you may be in a relationship, you may not be in a relationship with someone who is, you may be in a relationship with someone who is too feminine, sorry, who is too feminine, and your distant father or mother taught you due to abuse, big or small, that you need to be extremely independent. And so this example is avoidant dismissive. So they taught you to be extremely independent. So anybody who needs your nurturing outside of work, you don't know how to do that. And even in work, you may not know how to do that. You crave intimacy because your love language is um, your love language is, oh shit, your love language is receiving gifts, physical touch, words of affirmation. Those are some of your top three love languages, for instance. But you can't fully receive it because you were trained to do the opposite. Um, you were trained to do everything for yourself. Anxiety in business, let's say, anxiety can make you talk too much, meaning you talk yourself out of the sale. Avoidance can make you avoidance. The first one, dismissive, can make you use people and not build deeper relationships outside of the transactions. Been there, done that. That just triggers me just thinking about it. Fearful may make you ask questions that may make you not ask the questions you need to get what you want, or ask it and not execute on the idea, business, etc., because you're fearful and you need somebody's validation, you need somebody's permission. So, like, in other words, if somebody were to give you advice and you know it's the right answer, you may be fearful, so you avoid doing what it takes because you're fearful. Just doing this kind of gives me anxiety. Um, but I just learned that, like Elliot Hall said, anxiety can only be beat by doing what makes you anxious. So I can't tell you the other things on how to heal because I haven't researched them, or I haven't. I can intuitively tell you, but to avoid to But like I said, um, but yeah, that's the way it affects your business. It can affect your business. Let's talk about it for 2 more minutes. Fearful avoidance, fearful can affect your business um, by, let's say, you having that big idea, and it's going to take 10 to 15 years to execute, to build a craft, and you never do it because you're avoiding the process, you know, and which makes you procrastinate, which makes you not do it, and then 10 years later you see somebody else doing the idea that you once talked about. I even saw this with Gary Vaynerchuk. He had the idea that I was thinking about. Now, of course, I'm gonna come from a black perspective, but he's talking about parents and their dysfunction, and I was talking about that a couple years ago, but I never came out with it. I never built the brand. So, avoidant dismissive, meaning there may be something in your business that you may need to handle that's going to take you to the next level, whether it be you, and it's similar to fearful. Um, you may, but this is putting it off and putting it off and putting it off and avoiding it and avoiding it and avoiding it. This is deep procrastination in business, and you may need to uh, do it, and you don't do it till pain pushes your buttons. Till pain pushes your buttons, and you don't have no choice but to do it. Like you're in homelessness or whatever to do it, and now you have to. And anxiety can make you do all three of these things, um, and or what anxiety preoccupied makes you do is create excuses and fantasize, because uh, that's what one of the keys to anxiety preoccupied. You like to fantasize about love and about what you think is, and when it's what it's really, and your bubble doesn't get popped to what it really is. So, because that's one of the things with anxiety uh, preoccupied is you like to fantasize about your love life, about what you think is, and what you think it is, and what it, in your mind you have a whole story in your head about what it is, and it's really not that. You get me? So, and then you just create this cycle over and over and over and over and over and over, and you never do it, 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 and you die, and you're not doing it. Security is saying, when you're fully confident, I have the idea, and I just get to doing it. Even if I don't have the resources, I'm gonna find a way. They just execute. They're confident in themselves. So confident means uh, great trust in self, and they believe in themselves. They're secure in themselves, and you have to develop this with habits, rituals, um, and these people just do it because they firmly have a grounding in themselves. They're grounded. Um, so yeah, so this is how your love languages and your, in short, your love languages and your uh, attachment styles affect your business.